Okay, good day ladies and gentlemen. So today we are going to look at using some simple formulas and how we calculate things using our spreadsheets. So I've opened up a spreadsheet. I'm just going to rename it so I can find it later on. I'm going to call it simple formula. Okay. So formulas are the thing that we use when we want to calculate things in Excel. So here's the simplest formula I can think of. Let's have, whenever we do formulas, we always start with an equal sign. So if I just want to add two numbers together, let's say for instance I want to add 5 and 4. So I do equals 5 plus 4. Okay, and you can see that even though the text, the value that's in that cell is equals 5 plus 4, the thing that's displayed in the cell is actually 9. So it works out what that formula is and it puts the results. Now this is incredibly useful. For instance, if we want to use Excel as a calculator, I can do 5 minus 4, which is 1. I can do 5 times 4. So you'll notice I did the asterisk instead of the normal multiplication sign. That's on Shift 8 on most keyboards. So that's 20, and then 5 divided by 4, so equals 5 divided by 4 is 1.25. If I just type 5 plus 4, that's what I get. The way I turn it into a formula is by putting the equal sign in front of it, and now it's 9. Okay, so that's how we use the simple BIDMAS, because of course we can do all of the BIDMAS operations. So for instance I could do equals 5 times 4 divided by 8 divided by 2, for instance. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 5 times 4 is 20, that should give us the answer of 5. Okay, so that's really useful. It's a really powerful calculator. Okay, so that's how we go about doing the BIDMAS numbers. Now, in addition to being able to do that, so where we have just our calculation in a single cell, we can also use other cells in the calculation. So for instance, if I want to say this cell is worth 5, let's imagine this is the cars. This is the number of cars that we have. Number of cars, okay, that's going to be 5. And then I have people per car, and that's going to be 4. So the total number of people would be equal to 5 times 4. Okay, but instead of just hard coding, so that means putting in 5 times 4, what I can do is say click on that cell there, so equals B9, and then I'm going to do times and then type D9 20. Okay, so now we can see that if I say instead of having 5 cars, now I've got 6 cars. That's updated this calculation here. Or maybe I don't put 4 people in the car, maybe I buy bigger cars and I can put 6 people per car, and now it's 36. Okay, so once again, the way that we do that is we do equals, and then we can click on a cell to get the first one, and then do whatever operation you want to, and then you can either click on another cell or you can type in D9 to get its value. Okay, this is where spreadsheets become very useful, by having these kinds of calculations, because then we can start saying, well, imagine if I can get 8 people per car, but I only have 5 cars. And now I can start doing what if scenarios. Okay, so the other thing that we can do is we can use some simple formulas. So if I have a row of numbers here, for instance, so I'm going to have marks in an exam. Okay, so question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5. There are 5 questions. Each question for Mr. Sala. Mr. Sala scores 1 mark, no marks, no marks, 2 marks, and 1 mark. Okay, so I want to have a total amount of marks here. Well, first thing we can do is we could say equals, click on that cell, plus, 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 click on that cell, and that gives me the total of 4. Okay, that's fine. But there's an easier way, which is to do this. You do equals sum, open brackets, and then using my mouse I'm going to click and drag over all of the cells that I want to take the sum of, and then close my bracket and give me the 4. That gives me 4. And if I change this 0 to a 1, it'll go up to 5. So you can imagine if I've got 100 questions, I don't want to go around saying this one plus this one plus this one plus this one plus this one. I just want to use the sum. And then if I want to say Mr. Jones, he got 2 and then 0 and then 2 and then 0 and then 4. So again, equals sum, then there's 8. So another useful function that we use a lot is the average. So if I want to know what the average of the scores were, I would press equals average. I'm just going to use my mouse to click on the average, and then I'm going to click and drag on the cells that I want to take the average over, close the brackets, and then press enter. So the average mark is 6.5. Okay, now if for instance I've done some equations, I've used some formulas, and then I've gone away and I've come back again and I want to find out what cells did I use to build those formulas, what I can do is select the cell that I want to check. If I press the F2 key here we can see these are the cells that are the inputs to my formula. So if I'd made a mistake and I had only done those instead, when I press F2, I can see that I'm missing one here. So I've made a mistake. So I'm just going to click and drag that box out for it to be the same as this one, and this one's F2 as well. Okay, so we've talked about bid mass operations. We've talked about simple sum operations, and then we've talked about the average operations. Now there is a third one, which is product, which we don't use very often. Product means to multiply. So if I do 5 and 4 and then 3, and I want to multiply those 3 numbers by each other, then I can do product of those 3 numbers, and it gives me 60. But to be honest, we don't use that very often. It's just a useful thing to be aware of. Okay, so that's our first introduction to some simple formulas. I look forward to seeing what you're going to produce, and I hope to see you all soon.